Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions and the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. In this episode, I interview Brenden Kumarasamy. Brenden is an expert public speaker and content creator. While a slight detour from someone in the legal profession, I decided to have Brenden on the show because there's a lot we can learn from him, in particular as it relates to content creation and public speaking as a source of business development. We do discuss the difference between billing time and charging fixed fees because, of course, we do, and it's refreshing to get an outsider's perspective on the subject matter. Thanks as always to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, links to both in the show notes, more on them later. Remember to use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED when signing up. It lets them know you found out about them from the podcast, you get 10% off, and it really supports the show. If you're interested in learning how to launch and produce a podcast to market your firm, I'm using the Maven platform to teach a cohort-based course starting at the end of December. Seats are limited, so sign up using the link in the show notes. Another way to support the show is to share it with someone you know. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. Brenden Kumarasamy, welcome to Law Subscribed. Please introduce yourself to my listeners.
Matthew, the pleasure is absolutely mine. Thanks for having me. So my name is Brenden Kumarasamy. I'm the founder of Master Talk. Master Talk is both a media company whose goal is to help every human being on earth become an exceptional communicator, and it's a coaching business for high-level performers and executives who want to be the top speakers in their industry.
Love it. So let's talk about why you do what you do. What got you started with Master Talk?
For sure, Matthew. So for me, the story started in college. I never wanted to be a communication professional. I literally studied the opposite of communication, which is accounting. So that's what I did my bachelor's degree in. Never thought I'd be a communication coach. But during business school, I did these things called case competitions. Think of it like moot court in law school, but for business. So while other guys my age are playing rugby or basketball or baseball, I wasn't one of those guys. I did presentations competitively, and that's how I learned how to speak. But then as I got older, Matthew, I started coaching all the students, mostly for free back then, just to help them communicate their ideas more effectively. And that's what gave me the idea for Master Talk, the YouTube channel initially, because I realized that everything that I was sharing with the students wasn't really available for free online on the internet. So I just started making videos, and then a few years later, it turned to what it is.
Got it. Okay, so obviously, link in the show notes to the YouTube channel, but maybe tell my audience a little bit about like what are some of the types of videos that you're posting on there. Like we're going to talk a lot about your YouTube game today, so let's start with the types of content that you're creating.
For sure, Matthew. Happy to talk about the YouTube game. So the answer is really simple. So for our channel, my goal is to be an encyclopedia of communication. So every possible question you could ever have about communication, the goal of Master Talk is to answer all of them. So you'll find videos on how to build relationships with people, how to make new friends. You'll find videos on 5 public speaking tips, daily exercises you could work on. But you'll also find videos on how do you communicate effective boundaries with the people that you love. So the goal is really to, and there's also speaker breakdowns of different professional speakers in the circuit.
So a takeaway that I have from that type of content is, while nothing is truly evergreen, because things change, the things you're going to learn are going to change. But I feel like the content that you're putting out in this encyclopedia of communication is content that's going to be around and useful for a long time, right?
Yes, the goal of Master Talk is, and this is what I teach people, is there's kind of 2 funnels, right? The first funnel is what gets you money short term, so you can build a business. But there's another funnel that people don't think about, and I call it the humanity funnel, which is, will these videos live 100 years after I'm dead? Or 1,000 years after I'm dead? And that's really the point of Master Talk, the YouTube channel. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Good. So I called that right then, the evergreen content.
Yeah.
From a marketing, standpoint for attorneys too, if you don't have to be re-recording all these new things all the time for video content, however you decide to use it, then that's always beneficial. Laws change, facts, circumstances change, but if you could produce really good evergreen content, then that's going to last for a really long time. I hope that this podcast is also really good evergreen content. So let's talk about the journey. So now we know the why. We know what the content is at Master Talk, or at least a little taste of it. What's the journey been like? I mean, was it successful right away? What's that process been for you?
For sure. Think of Master Talk like an accident, Matthew, because I never really wanted to be a business owner. My goal is to work at McKinsey. Like, I wanted to be a consultant.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't want to be some entrepreneur because none of my family had made six figures until I started my corporate job. So I never saw entrepreneurship as the way out. I saw education as the way out. Get a great job. That's why I did these case competitions. It wasn't because I was passionate about speaking and I loved communicating. I knew there was jobs in investment banking and management consulting that was waiting for me at the end of those competitions if I had performed well, like all my friends got. So that's what happened. I worked at IBM in their consulting division for many years. So the start of Master Talk was literally me in my mother's basement taking a phone out and just making stupid videos every week. Hey guys, yeah, my name's Brenden. Here's my tip that I shared with a student 2 years ago. That's how the channel started. And then it was more of a hobby. So every week I would just post a video. I'd made $0 from doing it. And then I think the big roadblock I had, the first one, was when I thought about distribution. So I had a very smart idea, and I'm being sarcastic here, about sending 50,000 emails. I literally sent 50,000 of them to university and college professors across the US and Canada to share my videos. So thinking, well, I didn't have these videos. So if the teacher just shares it with the students, I have distribution like crazy. And I sent 50,000 emails and they all spat in my face. So that wasn't so fun. But yeah, so I think for me, Master Talk wasn't really meant to be a business. I just accidentally started making money. So 9 months into Master Talk, I met my business partner in Columbus, Ohio, Matthew, at some event called Summit of Greatness that a podcaster runs. And I met him there, and he's the one who said I had a business. He was like, "Hey, you could charge executives and people higher level thousands of dollars to work with you." And I was 23 years old at the time. I was like, "What are you talking about, dude? Doesn't make any sense." And that's when Master Talk went from just being an idea to starting to see some success. Yeah.
So another takeaway that I see is consistency too. Even if the way that you create content changes, being consistent with content creation was an important aspect of that journey. Does that sound right?
Oh yeah, I've been creating content now for 4 years. I have not missed a single week on YouTube since the inception of the channel.
Yeah, yeah. And there is also like I'm in the I'm deep in the content creation learning space, and so like there is some philosophies coming down the pipe of like try to not have to do that every week. Like how do you monetize around things or build a team or like I know like I'm a true solo entrepreneur and as are some of my listeners, but I do know like in that space there are like eventually it's going to lead to burnout. Now, you're still going strong, Brenden, but one of these days, you didn't think you'd be learning something on this podcast, but one of these days, I'm probably telling you something you already know, but, get a team or get somebody else to, like, make some posting for you. I don't know, do you already have a team who's, like, posting content, or do you front load content to record so that you schedule it to publish out? Like, how do you handle that to avoid burnout, I guess would be the good interviewer question.
You're all good, Matt. The answer is actually both. So I got really lucky in the sense that so I don't have employees. I have contractors who are my buddies, essentially.
Mhm.
So I just got lucky with my network where one of my best friends, he's been in the video game since he was 16 years old. So by the time I met him and I said, "Hey, I needed somebody to produce this profession," he's like, "Oh, I could do this too at a massive discount," because he's my friend. So he became my creative director. So he does all of my production. He edits everything. The only thing I do is I optimize for social and I post. So he takes pretty much 80% of the workload. And of course, I create the content. And the second contractor in my business is also a buddy of mine from college. He became like a famous painter off of TikTok. But when I met him, he was still getting started. So he designed all my thumbnails and the logo for Master Talk. So basically, my entire friend circle is the reason I was successful in that way. And the other piece to your point is yes, we are ferocious about batching content. Just to give you an idea, like as of today's recording, what are we, early Feb 2023? I'm already done my content strategy for all of 2023 for YouTube. I'm writing 2024 now. And I'm almost done. I have like 10 scripts left and I'm done. And LinkedIn, my daily posting strategy is already done for 2023. So, and the model that I had for YouTube specifically is I call it the 520 rule. So the 520 rule is post one quality piece of content every week for 10 years and you'll have a massive channel. And most people just aren't willing to play for 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. The podcast base is also very similar, right? Like most podcasts have 3 episodes and then they're just sitting on the platform and not producing any content. I got to call it out because I love language, man. You said your friend was in the video game. So is this like the Jumanji reboot? Is he's in the video game? I'm just
No, no.
I know, I know, I know, I know, I know. I'm just playing. I'm just playing. I've said that too before, and the first time I said that in the video game, I'm like, oh yeah, like video games. So anyway, that was just a fun little aside. Getting back to the takeaways, right? Batching content, building a content strategy, really important. I mean, along with consistency, right? Like these are all the things that you have to be doing if you want to have a good video game, if you will. So obviously you found a way to turn it into making money from doing what you sound like you actually enjoyed doing. So then how did, what did that transition look like? Certainly you don't only make money from just making YouTube videos, right? So like, what is it exactly that you do?
Yeah, no, I hate what I do. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just playing off your joke from earlier. So yes, and I think what was interesting, Matthew, is what ended up getting me full time had nothing to do with YouTube. Actually, less than 10% of my business comes from YouTube. Probably 5% at this point. Most of my business comes from word of mouth and LinkedIn, which brings us to the $1 million question. How did I exit corporate? I literally make $200 a month of AdSense and I spend $1,000 a month on production. So yeah, that ain't gonna work for me. I'm like minus 800. Coaching is how I exited corporate. Here's what I mean. The people who watch my YouTube videos consistently are not clients. And I'll tell you why. Because, and that's who my channel is for, right? They'll watch 3-4 hours because they got 3-4 hours to kill. So they'll watch it. They have a lot of time. But the person who becomes my client, Matthew, that I can charge thousands of dollars to. So if you only need like 50 of them to build a 6-figure practice out of the, let's say, the tens of thousands of people who follow somebody, those people will watch 1 or 2 videos and go, I don't have time for this channel, but he's pretty good, so I'm just going to hire him directly. So I don't waste time. And that's how I exited corporate through coaching.
Got it. So then let's go with that client avatar then. They watch 2 videos. They're like, I just want to work with this guy directly. They hire you. What does that process look like? What service do you provide?
Right. So the service that I kind of figured it out along the way, that's a lot more refined today, is really working on the communication technique within the boardroom. So a lot of my clients are in the Fortune 500. They're VPs, they're directors in big companies, they're startup CEOs. And for them, the biggest challenge, Matthew, is they have all the tips online for free. They just don't have a personal trainer that forces them to implement it. So for example, their eye contact is always off. They always look up in the sky whenever they're answering questions. So they look really discredited in front of a big corporate client. Another piece is they say a lot of uhs whenever they're talking. They don't smile enough. Their vocal tone projection is off, and they talk too quickly. So they make a lot of these mistakes in their communication. Whereas think of me like an army sergeant, and I fix all of that really quickly for them. I go, take this out, take this out, take this out, like an intense personal trainer. That's one piece. The second piece is leadership mastery, which is around how do we communicate holistically, not just presenting to like a board or to a client, but to how are we answering questions on a podcast from a team member when we're being interviewed for a job? How do we answer those questions in a way that brings confidence? And then the last piece that is relationship building. We teach a lot of our clients are immigrants. So let's say they're a vice president who was born and raised in India and who lives in the US now and is a big VP at, let's say, Amazon. So that person is really good at their job, but they suck at like as we say in French, like social hours, happy hours, like 5 assets, like when they're talking to people and they don't know when they get asked the question, what's your favorite sport? They go, what? Like, I don't know how to answer this.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of international stuff and speaking French, are you French Canadian then? Is that what? Yes,
that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So we are. I think you're now my 3rd guest who's been Canadian. So I think if I interview 2 more, this becomes a Canadian podcast, right? Isn't it? So you mentioned that a lot of your clients are the corporate world of like boardroom technique, and certainly there are some attorneys who may be listening who are at bigger firms who have the boardroom meetings, but even more broadly. And I have ideas of the things that you teach, how they can be used for attorneys. But like right now, as you sit here, what are some of the ways that you feel like the skills that you teach, the coaching that you perform, that can help attorneys specifically?
For sure, Matthew. So let's just jump into the tips because it applies across the board to your point. Because what I do with clients and what I do with the world is different. Because for the world, it's more about saying communication improves the quality of your life. It doesn't really matter what you do or who you are. Communication is just an accelerant of dreams. And I'll give you a specific one. If you're in a firm context as a lawyer, like if you want to be a partner at a law firm, most of your job is sales. right? Yeah, sure, you might have to go to court sometimes depending on the type of law that you practiced, but a lot of your job is closing deals, or it's getting the account signed. So if you don't know how to communicate your ideas effectively, they'll just pick another firm because you're not able to build those relationships with the client where they trust you over other partners that they could work with within the same sphere of law that they're looking assistance in. So that's just one simple example, but the tips is threefold. I call this my easy threes.
When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional-only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSubscribed at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form and scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSubscribed at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show.
So one is called the random word exercise, Matthew. Pick a random word like light bulb, house, home, car, and create random presentations out of thin air. Why should you do this? One, because the world is filled with uncertainty, and the random word exercise helps you deal with uncertainty. Think about when you're at a bar, you're at a networking cocktail, you meet somebody new, you have no idea how that conversation is going to go. You never met them in your life. You don't come to that conversation with predisposed questions. Okay, Matthew, this is the conversation we're about to have now as stranger. This is how it's going to go. And you're going to reply in this way. It doesn't make any sense. And the second piece is if you can make sense out of nonsense, you can make sense out of anything. So that's exercise 1. And exercise 2 and 3 is the question drill. Just pick a question that you think the world will ask you every day. Do that for 5 minutes a day, and you'll have an answer for everything in a year. Same thing with sending video messages to people you admire, people you appreciate. Makes their day.
I love the alliteration, makes sense out of nonsense, or the play on words there. But it makes me ask the question, can you make sense out of AdSense, Google AdSense? Because I've tried to do it, and it's so complicated. You really have to hire an expert to make sense out of AdSense. But that's a different interview with a different expert. So yeah, and so some things that came to mind for me for the tips that you gave and sort of the skills that you teach are ways that you can help lawyers specifically, as in addition to what you've already said, are the maintaining of relationships with existing clients, right? So like how you communicate, whether it's you're talking to them about a case or you're solving a problem for them. Attorneys love to use jargon, complicated language, and that's a hard thing to get away from because they drill that into you in law school. And if you have the sometimes displeasure of having to work for other attorneys, speaking now as a true solo, I love working for myself, but the old guard, as I lovingly call them, teach you to speak this way, right? And so it's depending on where, Brenden, you're getting the attorney at in their career, they may have to unlearn certain things to relearn how to properly communicate to lay people, non-lawyers. I mean, I'm trying to think of like a nicer way to say non-lawyer or layperson, but at least, to my listeners, they'll understand what that means. And then also, you did touch on this a little bit, and that was the sales aspect of it, right? Because if you're not building a book of business, what are you doing in the legal profession, especially if you want to go solo, be able to start an innovative practice like a subscription model-based law firm? You're going to need to be able to sell and build a book of business. You could have all the cool legal tech. You could have all the best business model things set up for your firm. But if you can't sell, then you're not going to be able to build a sustainable business. So I think that's another super important thing that you teach that attorneys can get from what you're working on. So another aspect, and this is, I have a question for you now here with this one, is you've done a lot of speaking gigs. And so if you're going to go out and speak, because this also ties back into sales, is getting out there and recognizing the public and speaking. I assume you teach, speaking for how to do that, to do public speaking as well. I mean, I assume, but I know I've read your stuff. But then how do you land the speaking gig, right? Is that something that you're also helping coach on? Because it's one thing to be able to teach, but you've landed a lot of speaking gigs. So like, how do you do it? Paid or unpaid? How do you do that?
Right. So let's start with the first point, Matthew. Every speaking engagement is a paid one. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we get paid monetarily to be there, but it's simply we speak at a chamber of commerce for free and we land 2 clients. Well, I'm happy with that result. Who
Yeah.
cares? You're getting paid. Right? So that's the first piece. Every speaking engagement is paid. The second piece to landing gigs is to focus on one talk. Just one. Right? And a lot of people, especially not necessarily in law, but just in professional services in general, their presentations, whenever they give them, usually doesn't add value. It's just all about their service and what they're doing for clients, which is boring. Notice how I'm not spending this podcast talking about all my offerings and what the pricing is, how it works. Like, people don't learn anything from that. Instead, what you want to say is like, if somebody was already a client, what advice would you give them in general? Obviously, everything's case by case in law, but what's some principles that you think would help people, even if they never worked with you? That's how you build a brand. That's the second piece. And then really refining that one talk until it's perfect. The third piece is how do you get gigs? So there's no silver bullet to this, Matthew. There's no easy trick where you're going to wake up tomorrow morning, you're going to have a bunch of speaking gigs. The only advice that honestly makes sense is to be so good that the market can ignore you. So my advice to any person I work with, once they get more mature in communication, is I go, starting this Friday, you're going to have a workshop on anything that you want related to your business. And you're just going to invite 10 people to that workshop, and there's your first speaking engagement. That's it. Like, you create your own opportunities. And then if you're good enough, what will happen is one of those 10 people who will be sitting on that Zoom call will go, holy crap, Matthew, you're so good. Like, I think you should come speak at my Chamber of Commerce. I think you're going to be so great. And that's how I've gotten all the speaking engagements I have. Not because my dad is the CEO of Coca-Cola and he gave me a bunch of referrals. It's because I opened up my own Zoom call that I still do to this day. People come to it. And people who want to book me to speak, I always get the event planners just come to that workshop first. I blow their mind, and then I sign the check after. So that's really the key.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I took a similar approach, right? You make your own podcast, and then you have content to show other people, and then and before you know it, you're on 100 podcasts, and you use the next one. It builds on itself, just like with the consistency with content creation, right? You have to, it has to build on itself. It's like a snowball effect, right? I love it. So, so a little bit implicit in that is like building brand awareness, right? So like, could you go into a little bit more detail with that about how you build your brand? Like, you could talk about you build your brand personally as a speaker yourself, but then also, in your coaching, how you help your clients, build their own brand as speakers in their own unique way.
Right. So there's 2 ways we can go about that conversation, Matthew. One is about client generation. The other one is just brand awareness in general. Well, let's start with the low-hanging fruit, which is the client piece and generating more leads. And I think the biggest challenge that people don't think about or understand is that they don't over-deliver enough for their existing clients. And it's not about, and I'm not talking about the service. I'm not talking about law. I'm talking about what are things that we can do as CEOs of our own businesses, as people running our own book, to get people to refer us more or at least talk about us more. I'll tell you a silly strategy that I do every year. It's called the birthday video message. So essentially what I do is I have my Google Calendar tells me which one of my clients' birthday it is. And then every morning, that's the first thing I do when I get up. I open my camera, I put a stupid birthday hat on that I bought for $10 at Amazon, and I send them a video message saying, guess whose birthday it is? It's yours. I hope you're having a great day. And that's it. And it makes their day. And I get so much business from this strategy. It's ridiculous, Matthew. And that's really the point I want to drive, is you need to find ways to stand out with the people who already are bought into who you are. The answer isn't always social media, and you'll just get more clients. Literally 70% of my book doesn't come from social media. It comes from the people who have already invested in what I do. Mm-hmm. So that's the first piece. The second piece is around brand awareness, which follows a similar train of thought. For me, the secret to growing on social media is to not focus on 1,000 followers, Matthew, but rather 1,000 conversations. Think about the goal for today. For me, the main goal is, even if no one's listening to this podcast, at least you're listening to me. So my point of view is like, okay, well, if I do 10,000 podcasts and nobody's listening to any of those 10,000 shows except the host, I have 10,000 new friends. So who cares? If that person shares my videos with 3 people, I have 30,000 followers. So that's social media. It's just a lot of people, we focus too much on the trends and what to focus on and the algorithm and evergreen instead of just knowing 10,000 people. And I think that's really the key.
Mhm. Yeah. And, being able to upsell or resell existing clients is always going to be easier than acquiring new clients, right? And so that's a really important takeaway. And I haven't really mentioned it yet, but the subscription model serves a really good purpose with that, because if you already have clients who are staying subscribed with you and you're giving them, say, access to a client portal where they're able to very easily, of their own volition, after they receive their birthday video message, sign into that client portal and buy another service or upgrade their subscription level or buy a subscription add-on, give them those options too. So everything you're saying does dovetail right into running a really efficient subscription business. Go ahead. You have thoughts on that? Go ahead.
No. You're
Okay.
absolutely fine.
Okay. And then I love the birthday video thing because I'm a contrarian who likes to get my wife gifts like a week before or a week after Valentine's Day instead of actually on the day itself. I still do something special, but like I'll give like gifts around. I refuse to like just go with the flow of like things. But that is such a good idea. But I'm still a contrarian, and everybody wishes people birthdays already. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a half birthday video. Hey, congratulations. 6 months ago, you turned 50. Happy half birthday. Who's wishing people a half birthday, huh? Huh? So,
I
there
mean,
you
that's
go.
interesting. Let me know how that works out for you.
There you go. There you go. Because they're already inundated. They're getting inundated with happy birthday messages on their birthday. But how many half birthday messages are they getting? Or here's a less strange version of that. Is how about your professional relationship anniversary, right? And so like you have an anniversary with your clients. There was the first date that you met or that they hired you, and you could send a video message that says, I just want to say happy anniversary. This is the 1 year anniversary or 10-year anniversary of the day that you hired me for the first time. And I want to thank you so much for your business. How do you think about that? How's that, Brenden?
That's interesting, man. I like it. I'm a contrarian too, but I think the difference between us is you're being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian. Whereas for me, it's more like I'm a big follower like Peter Thiel and Seth and all these different contrarians, René Girard. But for me, I think it's more about saying like, where's the practicality in the contrarianism, or else we're just being contrarian for the sake of it.
Yeah. Hey, you got to have fun some way in this life.
Well said, man. Well said.
So, you mentioned how you're not here to like promote this is what you're selling and this is how much it's going to cost. But guess what? I want to know at a minimum, like the way that you charge, right? Because I think one of the things we always talk about on here is what business model people are using and why. So, the three big ones are hourly, flat fee, or subscription, right? So what are you using and why do you use that?
For sure, Matthew. So the reason we run flat fee is really simple because it's a lot because let me explain this differently. It takes the same level of effort to sell a $300 client as it does a $3,000 client as it does a $10,000 client. It's the same effort it's just different prospects who'll be interested, but you're investing the same amount of time and effort and energy. So charging hourly is ridiculous, in my opinion, because you're not pricing based on value. You're pricing based on the number of hours you take. So eventually that will cap. You won't be able to do that. Whereas with flat-based pricing, you could say this is the cost of the program, and this is the value you get from the program. Do you want the program? And it's a lot easier to scale. So that's the flat rate piece. And then what happens is after they join our 3-month flat rate, the best students in the ecosystem get upsell into 1-year mastermind. And that's a continuity program for the best people that we like and we continue to work with. That's the model. But I think since we're talking business models, I'll tell you something unique that we do to make this insightful for the audience that nobody does in my industry. And it's called the referral free training strategy. So basically what I do is in our free training, we're the only training or one of the few who doesn't pitch our service. Because a lot of people, when you do a webinar, they always pitch at the end. Hey, this is my service, blah, blah, blah. But the reason we don't is very strategic. So the reason is because I want everyone in the free training to be a customer, but not necessarily a customer of the service, but a customer of the brand. So what does that mean? Everybody who attends the free service is a follow-up sequence, and they all go, wow, that training was amazing. And then we ask them to bring other people to the training, and that exploded our leads. Because naturally, if you just have a great training, they're like, yeah, I want to share this with people. So just this week, I think I got in the last 3 days, I got 100 leads just asking people to bring other people into the training. So that's the secret sauce behind what we do.
Yeah. There's no reason lawyers listening can't do their own version of that for prospective clients, right?
Yeah.
I love it. And by the way, if you sell a 1-year mastermind, Brenden, you're selling an annual subscription, baby. You're a subscription business. Did you know that?
I mean, technically I am, but I think the only difference between the traditional subscription, what we do, one is we don't sell the subscription up front
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want B players in my year-long program. So we admit a lot of people into our 3-month, but it's at a flat rate just to see who's good and who isn't, and we only invite the people we like into the year-long. And the other piece is our subscription is not renewal. So after the year, we give them the option to renew or not. We don't just automatically keep billing them every month like a traditional subscription business would do.
Right. But they have the option to resubscribe at the end of the year, right?
Of course, yeah.
All right. Annual subscription business. There you go. I love it. And so you mentioned this free service or free webinar, free program. I'm assuming that you run these with some frequency. So tell my audience a little bit more about, when the next one is or when they are typically, because this might be published after your next one, right? So like how often do you have them? How do people find out more about them? And where would they go to get access to that?
For sure, Matthew. So we do it twice a month, and it's a 90-minute workshop. You don't have to stay for the full 90 minutes. It's online. It's over Zoom. And this is where I give a lot of free practical communication tips. You can see me facilitate a workshop too. So if you want to jump in on that, go to rockstarcommunicator.com and just sign up for the next available date.
All right, rockstarcommunicator.com, link in the show notes too. Excellent. And these are would there be any reason to attend more than one, or it's more or less the same type of stuff in every 90-minute session?
It's the same content every time, but the content's really overwhelming. We share a lot. We try and squeeze as much as possible. So you'll see often a lot of people come back over and over again.
All right, awesome. Well, before I ask you my final question, is there any other interesting thing you want to share with my audience?
Yeah, I would say, the question that I feel is not talked about enough in my industry that I always like to share is how would your life change if you became an exceptional communicator? A lot of us, when we think about speaking, we always go, oh, it's not for me, or I'm too scared. I don't want to do it, but we don't think about the possibilities. And one frame that I could give your audience, except those who want to be solopreneurs, is let's say you're in a firm setting, you want to be partner. The challenge with that frame is we look at that person's sales targets, we look at what that person does day to day, but we don't often think about how that person is conveying their thoughts, how that person communicates, what that person's executive presence is like. And I would encourage people to think that way, because then you dream about a bigger future for your own communication skills, and then you're motivated to even do it in the first place and get better.
Yeah, I love it. So with that, I'm going to ask my final question that I ask all my guests, which is, Brenden, is a hot dog a sandwich, and why?
Is a hot dog a sandwich? I mean, I guess technically it would be a sandwich, right? Because it's like there's like two breads and there's like meat in the middle. So yeah, I'd say it's a sandwich, sure.
All right. Well, with that, if anyone wants to follow up with you directly, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
So 2 ways. Thanks, Matthew. It's great to be on the show. So one is definitely rockstarcommunicator.com. Just register for our trainings and you'll get a hold of me pretty quickly. And the second way is to go to our YouTube channel. Just go to Master Talk in one word and you'll have access to hundreds of free videos on how to speak.
All right, great. And you are on LinkedIn too, because most lawyers these days are on LinkedIn, so they could find you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, if you can figure out how to spell my name, you could totally find me on LinkedIn. I answer all my DMs.
Well, your name will be in the show title and link to that as well in the show notes. Brenden, thanks again for coming on the podcast Law Subscribed.
Pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me.
And that's our show. Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for being sponsors. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with somebody you think would find value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn, since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.